Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Noyana Patagami Bhava Tume Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvatacharya, also Tara Satashi Shrimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanara Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anandakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Pacharadam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamari Ki Jai Shrimati Lassi Devi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Haribol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deja Tarni. So Omagana Timadanda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So today is the day of Rath Yatra. And so, Harival, Jagannath Rath Yatra Ki Jai. So, I'm just going to speak a little bit about Rath Yatra today. Actually, recently, in during my evening classes, we've been talking or reading from the Krishna book about the meeting of the residents in Vrindavan in Kurukshetra, which is actually where the Rath Yatra ceremony comes from. So what happened is the residents of Vrindavan at the time of the eclipse, and not only the residents of Vrindavan, but all the kings and ministers and brahmanas. I mean, Vyasadeva was there, Agastya Muni, all the different sages were just meeting at this one place in Kurukshetra. Of course, this is before the Battle of Kurukshetra. So, but Kurukshetra has been a holy place since time immemorial. Dharmic Kshetra, Kurukshetra, Samaveta, Yuyutsabaha, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. So they were meeting at this place during the eclipse, right by the lakes, Samantaka, Panchaka, that Parashuram had created. Parashuram had created these 5 lakes from the blood of the Kshatriyas that had been killed when he killed all the Kshatriyas. So, anyway, so they were meeting, but the lake no longer had blood in it, it was water at that particular point. So they were meeting there and performing these different ceremonies and sacrifices and distributing prasadam. And so Nanda Maharaj was there, other residents of Vrindavan, Vasudeva was there, and they all greeted each other because they're basically relatives. Like Nanda Maharaj and Vasudeva, they're half-brothers. And Nanda Maharaj was born from a Vaishya wife, and Vasudeva was born from a Vaishya mother, and Vasudeva was born from a Kshatriya mother. So basically all the different clans, the Yadus and the Rajavasis, they were all related by blood ties, and so they were embracing each other and happy to see each other. And then Krishna, he met the gopis. Of course, he in a secluded place, he actually went to meet the gopis, which are the foremost devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the gopis basically, the other residents of Vrindavan, wanted to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan because they basically couldn't relate to Krishna in his mood as a king, in his Kshatriya mood. The reason they couldn't relate to Krishna as a king is because they wanted to have an intimate, close relationship with him. And we know when you approach someone in an official position where they're enacting their official capacity, it's hard to be very close with them. I mean, for example, if you were to go to the mayor's office, and then you'd have to follow all this formality in seeing the mayor. But if you were his close friend and going to his home, it would be different. So let's say you were the mayor's wife, and you went to see the mayor in his office. You couldn't just usually you shouldn't be giving him a hug and doing all sorts of things like that. You should observe the formalities even though you were the wife. But then when you get home, then you're intimate with him. So the gopis, they couldn't relate to Krishna and the other devotees there from Vrindavan in that awe and reverent mood. Krishna is in Vrindavan, he's intimate, and nobody thinks of him as God. They always think of him as their son or their boyfriend or their friend or a coward boy, like that. So, therefore, they wanted to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan. And the Rath Yatra ceremony is the symbolic dragging of Krishna back to Vrindavan by, especially the gopis and the other residents of Vrindavan. So, of course, there is the Rath Yatra itself, in which Lord Jagannath goes to the Gundicha temple, which represents Vrindavan, and incidentally, we all know about the Gundicha Marjana, where in order to enter Vrindavan, the devotees need to clarify or clear their consciousness, minds, and hearts, and the cleansing of the Gundicha temple is representative of cleansing the heart of a devotee so Krishna can manifest himself in the intimate mood with a devotee. So, anyway, so there was the Rath Yatra ceremony has many different parts. Of course, there's the Snana Yatra, which is the bathing ceremony of Lord Jagannath, and then Lord Jagannath apparently gets sick, and he's not sick, he just wants to be with the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, get some quality time with her. But when he's with the goddess of fortune, guess what? He starts to remember his girlfriends in Vrindavan, because the wives of Krishna, the goddess of fortune in particular, Lakshmi, reminds him, or is there an expansion of the gopis in Vrindavan, and so it reminds him of his girlfriends. And so after the period in which Lord Jagannath is apparently sick, but he's not actually sick, he decides to go to Vrindavan, which is the Gundicha temple. So he leaves the goddess of fortune, telling the goddess of fortune that he's only going for a short walk. And then he goes, was it 9 days? He goes for 9 days, but after the 5th day, the goddess of fortune becomes so upset he hasn't come back that she sends her associates to attack the associates of Lord Jagannath who are in the Gundicha temple. And when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was present, his associates took or played the different parts in that particular drama. Some of his associates played the parts of the goddess of fortune's associates, and some other associates played the parts of Lord Jagannath's associates. And the goddess of fortune's associates were beating up the associates of Lord Jagannath. And when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw this, he started laughing, and he said he has never seen such envy and anger as that manifested by the goddess of fortune. And there's a whole discussion in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about this, about different types of angry women. But I'm not going to get into that discussion right now. So then ultimately, Lord Jagannath comes back, but not after the 5th day. It takes 9 days. There's a return yatra to the Puri temple, in which he comes back and leaves Vrindavan again. So this is the significance of the Rath Yatra. And also, one should understand why Lord Jagannath looks like he looks like. There's 2 stories, or several stories, that describe why he looks like he does. Of course, the story that most people are familiar with is the story of Indradunya Maharaj, who basically employed a sculptor who some people say is Vishwakarma, other people say is God, but anyway, whatever he was, to sculpt the deities, and the sculptor said he would sculpt the deities from this wood that he said it would take 21 days, and he said, if you interrupt me, I'm going to stop sculpting. So then after about 14 days, he interrupted the sculptor, and you have these half-finished deities. But that's not the real reason why Lord Jagannath looks like he looks like. The real reason is, and there's another story told by my godbrother Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and also it's told by Sanatana Goswami, so it's not just told by one person, that once upon a time when Krishna was in Dwarka, Lord Jagannath, that is, Krishna was in Dwarka, and of course Subhadra was in Dwarka, and Balaram was in Dwarka. But Rohini, the mother of Balaram, who happened to have been in Vrindavan during the early pastimes, and also was in Dwarka simultaneously, not simultaneously, but afterwards, was asked by Krishna's wives about the pastimes in Vrindavan. So Krishna's wives asked Rohini, please tell us about the pastimes in Vrindavan. And Rohini said, I will be happy to tell you, but you could have to make sure that nobody hears what we're talking about. And so you have to post someone at the door of the room, because if Krishna hears, he'll want to go back to Vrindavan. If Balaram hears, he'll want to go back to Vrindavan. So they thought, who should we post at the door of the room so that nobody who's not supposed to hear, someone who's not supposed to hear, will not hear about these pastimes. So they posted Subhadra at the door. And they told Subhadra, basically, don't listen. You should not listen to what's happening. Don't let anyone come near, and don't let anyone enter this room. So Subhadra did what comes naturally, is when you're told not to listen or enter a room, it's a challenge. And you want to do it, right? So she listened to what was happening in the room, and as she was listening to what was happening in the room, she was amazed at hearing about the Lord's pastimes in Vrindavan. So when she was hearing about the Lord's pastimes in Vrindavan, her eyes opened wide and her arms sort of shrunk into her body. Now you may say, how is this possible? Well, Subhadra is the Shakti of the Lord. She's not Vishnu Tattva, she's Shakti Tattva. She's, as all Shakti Tattvas are, expansions of Srimati Radharani, and she has a completely spiritual body. Now, if one has a completely spiritual body, one's body can manifest in whatever way one's consciousness is being expressed. For example, in Vaikuntha, normally, that is outside of Vrindavan, normally in Vaikuntha, the residents have 4 arms and they look like Vishnu or Lakshmi. But sometimes they appear as monkeys or birds or other animals. This is very interesting, described in the Brahma Samhita. Why is that? Because they're giving pleasure to the Lord. So the bodies that they have, the spiritual bodies, can manifest their mood, which is quite interesting. I mean, our bodies can manifest our moods to a certain extent. You know, if I become ecstatic, which is not very often, then, you know, my eyes may open up a little bit, my mouth may go open up, but my arms, they don't become extended anymore, and my arms don't shrink up into my body. And, you know, it's the same person, just the facial expression and maybe some of the bodily motions are a little bit different. But with spiritual bodies, just like it described in the Brahma Samhita, Angani Yasha Sakalen Driyadri Timanti, that the spiritual bodies manifest one's mood, feelings, bhava, that means emotions, one's ras, you know, all these different things. Because Sachidananda, Angani Yasha Sakalendriya Dri Timanti. In a spiritual body, you can see with your hands, you can see with your legs, you can taste with your hands. All the senses are interchangeable, just like the Lord's body too. There's no physical limitations. So Subhadra manifested that mood of amazement. And her arms shrunk up and her eyes got wide, and she looks like the Subhadra deity that we have on the altar. And then, when Balaram walked by, he saw what Subhadra was looking like, and he was wondering, what's happening with Subhadra? So he also put his ear to the door, or somehow or other listened, and he remembered his pastimes in Vrindavan. And a similar thing happened. Of course, he looked a little bit different. You know, his arms, and Balaram is white normally anyway. And so Balaram assumed the shape of the deity, of Lord Baladev. And then I guess you can understand that same thing happened with Lord Jagannath, with Krishna. And so they manifested this mood. What is the mood? The mood is, of course, amazement, adbhuta, which is one of the indirect rasas. But the mood is one of intense separation from Vrindavan and the residents of Vrindavan. And we see this during the Rath Yatra ceremony, at least the exchanges that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had with Lord Jagannath. For example, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was interacting with Lord Jagannath, so much so that sometimes Lord Jagannath's cart wouldn't move, and all the king's horses and all the elephants of King Prataparudra, I guess they can open the curtains, couldn't get the cart to move. But Lord Chaitanya had to push the cart with his head to get it to move. So there was this exchange between Lord Chaitanya, Jai, Shishi Radhakanta, Radhakanta, Shishi Gornatai, Shishi Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai. So there's an exchange between Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna, but Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani. So you have Krishna, who is feeling like Srimati Radharani, feeling separation from Krishna. Try to wrap your mind around this. Krishna is feeling separation from Krishna because he's in the mood of Srimati Radharani, Gauranga. And then you have Krishna on the chariot, because Lord Jagannath is Krishna, who's feeling separation from Srimati Radharani, who is actually himself, but playing the part of Srimati Radharani. And so throughout the Rath Yatra ceremony, you have this exchange between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Jagannath. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has this famous verse. He says, "You are the same Krishna and I'm the same Radharani, but I wish to enjoy to be with you in Vrindavan along the banks of the Yamuna, the Vatasi, near the Vatasi tree." So there's a wonderful exchange that basically the devotees, most of the devotees didn't understand this particular verse, and Rupa Goswami understood this verse quite nicely. And when Lord Chaitanya understood that Rupa Goswami had understood this verse, he actually slapped Rupa Goswami. And he says, "How have you understood this?" And Swarup Damodar Goswami said, "He must have gotten your mercy." And so Rupa Goswami is our founder Acharya, Sri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam, Stapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam, because he understands Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mood. So his books such as the Ujjala Nilamani, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Prabhupada translated as the Nectar of Devotion, are the foundation of our Krishna consciousness movement. So this is the Rath Yatra ceremony, the exchange between the residents of Vrindavan, particularly Srimati Radharani, and Krishna, and attempting to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan. So anybody who participates in this Rath Yatra ceremony, which was Prabhupada's favorite festival, favorite ceremony, in fact, Prabhupada would, even when he was a child, he would always be looking at the train schedules going to Jagannath Puri from Calcutta, and just planning how he could go to see Lord Jagannath and Lord Chaitanya. And Srila Prabhupada also conducted his own Rath Yatra when he was 5 or 6 years old in the streets of Calcutta. So Prabhupada was extremely attached, because this shows that Prabhupada is a Brajavasi, and Prabhupada was serving Krishna in the mood of separation from Vrindavan, or separation from Krishna, Radha and Krishna. So it's also interesting that Prabhupada left Vrindavan to preach in the West, because generally an old person doesn't leave Vrindavan. An old person, they stay in Vrindavan waiting until they die. Because if you die in Vrindavan, you go back to Godhead. But Prabhupada brought Vrindavan with him everywhere, as stated by Narottama Das Thakur, Kabe Hama He Rabo Shri Vrindavana. When one has a pure mind, pure consciousness, a pure devotee like Prabhupada, then his mind, he brings Vrindavan wherever he is. And so Prabhupada really never left Vrindavan. But Prabhupada was always executing devotional service in the intense mood of separation from Vrindavan. So the Rath Yatra ceremony sort of typifies or illustrates Srila Prabhupada's mood in devotional service. So I think that's also a very important point. So, anyway, so keep it short. Any questions or comments before we end class and get ready for Rath Yatra, because Rath Yatra starts at 11, right? 11 Indian Standard Time or New Orleans Standard Time. Anyway, so if there's no questions, it's good to see everybody here. It's good to be back in New Orleans. And we're looking forward to the Rath Yatra today. We came all the way here just for Rath Yatra. And tomorrow we're having an appreciation ceremony of Prabhupada for Prabhupada, right? Appreciation, memories, Prabhupada Katha, and that'll start 10 o'clock in the morning. So we look very much forward to that. So, I guess that's it. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.